Susie, will you call roll?
Councilmember Groves.
Here.
Councilmember Chambers.
I am here.
Councilmember Salzweedl.
Here.
Councilmember Barkis.
Here.
And Mayor DeVore.
Here. Motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
All support.
I'd like to make one change, and that is down at the bottom of the agenda, we are requiring each speaker at the podium 5 minutes maximum. I don't know on work sessions if there's some give and take or some back and forth discussion, but could we open up the discussion to more than 5 minutes maximum for each person? So can they speak and kind of more back and forth? Is that allowed?
Generally, we will give grace if it goes more than 5 minutes, but it's not a hard line rule. It just gives us the opportunity to shut it down if it's out of hand.
And
So,
respect everybody's time as well.
yeah, yeah. No,
We pretty much set that as a standard now for all of our boards. It's a 5-minute thing, so
so if there's 100 people, they are all guaranteed their time. So, no, I'm gonna leave that rule in place.
But there is a rule that if a husband and a wife are here, the husband could speak 10 minutes and take 5 of his wife's minutes.
I don't, it's not a hard rule that you know what I mean? I don't set a timer and then kick people off the podium. I think we've done enough contentious meetings and I've always let people get their time in without, so we're just gonna leave it the way it is and we'll continue to do it the way we've done it. So any other discussion on changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll vote. Sue?
Councilmember Groves.
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers.
yes.
Councilmember Salzweedl.
Yes.
Councilmember Barkis.
Yes.
And Mayor DeVore.
Yes. Is there public comment not concerning Riverside Drive? That's okay.
7.
Okay. All right, Riverside Drive, Mike.
So, just to start, right in front of you, we did have the police department run the speed trailer for about, 2 weeks we ran, or for a week?
Well, we ran it 1 week with the display on, 1 week with display off.
Okay. And so, what this, I'm gonna have Chris just kind of walk you through the report that's in front of you, but you're gonna find that it's pretty interesting. One of the things that's really interesting to me, at least in a 1 week period, the amount of cars that are going down Riverside Drive, almost 4,000 cars, that's a lot of cars.
I thought it was my imagination.
And then I'm gonna have Chris walk you through the report, but go ahead, Chris.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay, all right. We ran this speed trailer from June 3rd to July 10th. We left it out there 24 hours a day. Let it run. It was a good test because I'm not sure how long those batteries will last, but apparently they last at least a week. During this week, we had 3,878 cars go through, and I believe it's only counting the northbound cars, because it's all that can go up Riverside. 67% of the cars were doing 0 to 25 miles an hour. Nearly 31% of the cars were doing between 26 and 35. So about 97% of the vehicle traffic that went on Riverside was at 35 or less, and we had a 2% of 35 plus miles per hour during that time period. The only other significant thing that I saw was, like I said, the number of cars. I was really surprised to see there was that many vehicles that went north on Riverside Drive in 1 week period. The busiest day was, it's the busiest times. Where is that? Busiest time of the day is between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. After 4 o'clock, it drops off. Then it gets busy again. It's at 7 o'clock, but not quite as high as 4 o'clock. But then it really drops off after that. So I was surprised to see with the display off the differences. We had the display on. The average speed for the time period we had it out there was about 23 miles an hour. And then with the display off, we're still averaging within 10 miles an hour or 5 miles an hour of the speed limit. So it wasn't a big. I was expecting a bigger change, but there really wasn't.
The other thing I noticed, percentage-wise, I mean, you're looking at about almost 31% of the cars over 25 miles an hour. And so that's the equivalent to about 1,200 cars. But once you start getting to the 35 and 45 mile range, it's 3%. And even when you look at the data from when you get to like 30 to 31 miles an hour, you get about just under 6% of the cars. And then when you get to 32 to 33%, it's about 2.5%. So, I mean, still a large portion of the people that are driving that road are driving the speed limit. But that being said, there is quite a bit of cars that are going over, and really what kind of alarms, well, what kind of just, it doesn't shock me, but 3,800 cars in a week going through that stretch of roadway on what's deemed a local street. That's a lot of cars. I wonder if there's another street in the city that's a local road, not the major roads, but that's a local road that has even nearly that amount. It'd be interesting to see. The only one I can think of is, well, I wouldn't even say Monroe, because Monroe's a major, and so is Jefferson. They're major streets. But Riverside is categorized as a local street, so I would be very interested to find another street in the city that's a local road that has that much traffic. So that kind of leads us, one of the things that we have been talking about, we even started talking about this internally before we even looked at Riverside, was when the construction comes, doing something different with Riverside Drive. And because we know that once it is paved, it's going to be a drag strip, especially for those cutting through downtown out to Flat River. We know that's going to happen. So there's different things we can do. Understand that we can't. I mean, just to pave Riverside, just to pave it, is $500,000. Estimated, roughly around that range. I mean, most of our streets are coming in about 300, 400,000. 400 is like on the high end of but because of the length of the roadway, you're looking at over $500,000 probably by the time you include the engineering costs. And like I said, it's a local street, and it is budgeted in the street plan. And originally, when we planned Riverside, we were trying to get a grant for Riverside, where we could get 50% of the cost, and that was when we put our 7-year street plan into place. I calculate the cost for every road, an estimated project cost, to make sure we can have the money to do the project. And I've reconfigured some things to make sure that we can put this project in for 25, 26, regardless of any grant. But that being said, there's some things I think we can do, but we got to remember too. One of the things that happens is if we start bumping this up to $600,000-$700,000 for this project, then another street that's in the plan won't get done, or it'll get extended out longer than it needs to. So it's kind of the balancing act that we have when we're dealing with all of the streets, because there's so many streets in the network that have to be done because they haven't been done, but there are certain streets that are, in my opinion, are priority, and Riverside is definitely one of them. So we've started, we've kind of looked at this. I personally, if I was to make the recommendation, my recommendation would be what we do is we do what we did at Lincoln Lake in that subdivision there, where we basically turned the road. We did it at Lincoln Lake and Elm, and we did it on the other side of Richards Park. I can't remember the streets off the top of my head, but that was done years ago because the same issue was happening on Lincoln Lake. People were driving too fast down Lincoln Lake, so they did that. My thought is, if you did it at Elm, you completely restrict access for the cars that are cutting through downtown off of Flat River. You completely restrict it. And what you'll end up doing is you'll divert everything to Elm Street. The good thing about Elm Street is you're gonna have to pay, if you do this, you're gonna have to pave Elm Street. And the good thing is Elm is a major street, so there's money to pave Elm Street. Be very easy to pave Elm Street. But the other thing is you're gonna have to address Spring Street. And if you did Spring Street, if you fix Spring Street and you allow the cars to go in off of Spring Street, and if they live north of Spring Street, they can go north, just like they do now. Or, I don't even believe there's any driveways on Spring Street south between Spring and Elm, but even if there are, I can't remember off the top of my head, just make it southbound traffic. It wouldn't be an issue because you would put some type of a barrier or a boulevard, just like what they did over on the other end of town. And if you're going to pave Spring Street, you're probably only looking at about $125,000 to pave it. It's not going to be a lot of money because that's a very small street, which then would also be a local street. So from a cost estimate, I think it does. I think from a practicality, it does three things. It takes out the biggest issue of restricting access on Riverside, and it does it there. And it just keeps those cars out of the neighborhood. And to me, that's the simplest solution to the problem. And then it goes away forever. Now, maybe my solution isn't the best solution, but and I'm open to other ideas. But one of the things we got to remember is you could also restrict it up at Hunt. If you restricted it up at Hunt where you don't allow access at Hunt, the problem you're going to have is you're still going to have the cars going north on Riverside trying to get out of the subdivision. And I don't think the residents want that as well. I think the residents really would like that street not to be a pass-through street. And that's kind of my thought. But I'm open to other ideas, but it seems to me like it would be simple to just restrict it there, and then we can kill two birds with one stone. Now, I am going to submit a grant when the county does their CDBG grant next year. I'm going to submit for Riverside, along with all of the cross streets between Hunt and Elm, with the exception of Elm, because Elm can be paid for by a major street, to see if we'll get that partially funded. I'm not betting on it, but if we can't get that grant, at least I think we can reconfigure our street plan to address Elm and Spring, where we can at least get two of the streets and along with Riverside. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think, like I said, it'll do what it'll do is I would think the residents would be happy that there'd be no traffic going through. The people it's going to make mad are the people who can't cut through there, and I don't think that's really our concern. They shouldn't be going down Riverside anyway to get out to Flat River. They should be going down Hudson. So it's kind of my thought. But there's a couple other slides on here that we've looked at.
There were 4 ideas total. If we could just go through these.
Sure.
2 have been submitted by residents, and I'm sure there's more.
Yeah.
Let's just talk through all 4 of them.
Sure.
And then we'll open up for discussion. So that's number 1. The only resident it really affects, there's one house on Elm that is a rental, so that person will see increased traffic. And then the funeral home that, there's very little, just the one resident is on idea 1. Idea 2, please, Sue. This is from Kimball to Louis. This is a very good idea too, and maybe he'll speak to it. But he's suggesting doing the same thing up nearer to him, north of Suffolk. This still allows people from Maine to bypass the light. So there will still be some bypass on this one, but this one has good merit too. And then 3.
Eric, if I can make one correction, I still had the arrow on Foreman heading back north. That's the only difference, and I mean, that can be a topic of debate as well, and which would be better.
Not of the north.
The northbound, okay.
All right, sorry, I didn't capture that.
That's okay.
And then 3, this is more of the bump out idea, and this is probably confusing, but instead of having a firm stop north of Elm, this would be a bump out that would force cars to turn west onto Elm, and it would still possibly allow people on Elm to turn north there at the bump out, but
Are you making Riverside then a one-way south to Elm?
it could be either. And one-way south, again, that's probably confusing, so it's not a great idea. I'm just mentioning, just think, instead of
If it's
a,
two-way, if it's two-way traffic, what's to stop me from just going around the pump?
That's my concern with that one right there.
That, I would do
Unless
it
you make
literally
it a
every
one-way.
single time.
I totally agree, and I don't think this is a good idea. I just want us to think about bump outs instead of hard stops.
I
That's
don't,
all.
I don't like that idea, even if, whatever direction you make it, because you have a motorcycle or car, they're gonna just go around it, they're gonna just go down, and you haven't solved your issue.
If it's clear to Spring Street, I'm doing it every single time.
Right.
All right, scratch that. Let's move on.
Eric, that one
Sorry.
in LaPorte, Indiana, I go through there every week. They tried that, and you can't believe how many cars will just roll up and go and continue on. And they're harder on the fuel, I think, after they made the little,
Yeah. I'm not a traffic engineer, but this is an open, a free-for-all for ideas, and
Can
then,
you go back to idea number 2 real quick? I like the idea, the only concern I see with Suffolk and Foreman is you're gonna have to pay Suffolk and Foreman because there's gonna be more traffic down those roads, and they're both local streets. You're probably looking at about $250,000, $300,000 to pay Foreman and Suffolk. I know they need to be done, but if we do that, they're not in the street plan now, we have to take the street out of the street.
What do you do with the black square? You just green space that? Is that what we're saying?
well, as a test, it would just be a barrier north of Suffolk.
What would you do with traffic going east on Suffolk?
Yeah.
Because
That's, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
only
you'd
one
have
block.
to,
make it one way.
but, yeah, you could make it one-way coming out, but then these residents are affected. But if you have, is there sidewalks on Riverside Drive right here?
Yeah. Yeah,
So you'd have a vacated street. You couldn't green space the whole thing, because you'd have
You just need
to tear a
cul-de-sacs.
continuous sidewalk. I don't know.
Now, if you got a grant to pay Foreman and Suffolk, great, but I don't want to bet that we're gonna get that either.
can we go back to the first one?
Is there a fourth one still too?
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that one the best. Just quickly get them off, you know.
Right, and Elm's a major anyway, it's
Right.
already a major.
So, and then
And the residents can really, to use Spring, if they're in that area, and to access, and I don't believe there's any, like I said, I don't believe there's any driveways off of.
There's
just-
one.
No, there's one, there's
Canfield's
one.
rental,
318.
And but that, if they go south, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's not a big deal.
So does that have to go to a two-way street then, right there?
No, just
But
give them one.
you're still gonna have two-way traffic on that. Well, it's only for one house, but theoretically, does it have to be a two-way street at that point?
I mean, theoretically, yeah, I guess, but I mean,
I'm just curious if it causes any challenges with, if there's on-street parking, plowing, you got.
I don't think you can really park on it, it's pretty narrow. to
right
begin
now,
with.
Yeah,
Elm does allow you to go to the end and turn to come into town.
Right,
So if we just leave Elm as a two-way street,
yeah, Elm would still be two-way.
and we know we can get funding to do that,
Yeah, we can, yeah, we have the money, I mean, we have the money right now to do Elm.
All right, well, let's hit number 4 real quick, and then we'll talk about the 2 or 3 that we want to talk about.
So this is submitted by Bob Fowler, and it's a little more complicated. I don't know if Bob's here or not to explain it better than I can, but I think Broadway used to be two-way. He said revert it back to two-way on Broadway, and then have Riverside one way to the south there by Easy Street. And I haven't thought this one through completely, but it's an idea.
Back when I was a kid, they were both two-way. Perry can actually, where's Perry? Riverside was two-way too.
Riverside was two-way
Yeah.
and was gravel
And-
before 1972, 73.
With Broadway, when the islands got put in, even though there's a left and right-hand turn there as a one-way, one car can fit there, right, because that's pretty tight. And with the bump outs down here on Riverside, you're the same thing, so.
Is there more pictures for idea number 4? Because if there isn't, I'm confused as to what this does for Riverside. This looks like
It just
more
shows
of a,
people getting out of the back parking lot. and-
yeah, this is more of a, these businesses, Easy Street problem, not a, how does this help the people in Riverside?
The other thing is you have to reconfigure the angle
And
parking.
you can't go two ways on Broadway anymore. You can barely get a left and a right turn going south right now, as it is. Now,
And people are just gonna fly up Broadway
That's
and
what I'm
onto
saying.
Riverside.
you're making more trouble for Riverside with this.
I agree,
Let's not
Mike.
do
I
that.
don't totally
Yeah.
understand it. It's confusing. I just, again, it's an idea.
Okay.
That's why I like option one.
Option 1. Okay, let's let,
Because it'll be, in my opinion, option one, they're very quickly, people are gonna do it, and they're very quickly gonna go, oh wait, we can't do this anymore. And the whole problem's just gonna come to an end. I don't see them turning like you're thinking and buzzing up that way. I would think down by where Ron and Carrie live, where you get onto Old 91 to go out of town, I would think that street is probably gonna pick up a lot of traffic, but
also it's a proven, anyways, go ahead, Bruce.
Bruce Matthews, 326 Riverside. I actually had a quick question, but since I'm up, Chief, on the study that you cited, that was based on the monitor being up there at Foreman or Parkway at Riverside, right? Okay. So the 3,900 vehicles that you counted there wouldn't have counted necessarily the vehicles that came up and turned left on Riverside or Elm to get onto Lincoln Lakes, right?
Yep.
Right. So presumably, we're talking more vehicles, and at least where I live on 326, right there at the corner of Spring Street, we see a lot of vehicles, trying to cut off the light and cut down there, and I don't know what their speed is, it's just fast. So I just, would point that out, that the problem is probably bigger than, what the data describes. It seems to me that option one is something that could be tried, and it wouldn't be all that difficult if we ran into problems with it, that it could be removed and another strategy tried, but it seems to me that's the easiest and simplest and probably the most effective one to do. The other thing I point out real quickly is that we're talking traffic here, we're talking vehicular traffic. Riverside is a major thoroughfare for hikers or for bikers and walkers, whether they're going into town, whether they're just taking a stroll, and their safety is something that I think needs to be considered as well. So any speed that's over the speed limit is not appropriate, not acceptable in my view. And I'd hate to see an accident happen before something was changed with that. So that's something I think is important to keep in mind, is the amount of pedestrian traffic and bike traffic that occurs on Riverside. So, thanks.
Thanks, Bruce.
Hi, Kimball Louie, 810 Riverside. So I do like option one, but I also like option two with it. Part of the problem is I live right on Foreman Street, and getting in and out of Foreman during certain parts of the day, it's a pain in the backside. And you've got 3 factories there, one of them a significant factory with Lighthouse, and then you've got all the school traffic. And there's periods of time in the day, I don't care if if you only blocked off Elm, if I'm going that way, and especially if I lived on Five River, pick your street. As long as I can turn before Foreman, then I'm out of town. I'm going to just charge down the road. So I think that those two together give your most complete option. It also allows people that actually just want to putz along the river to still do that without the throughway traffic. Yes, it would dump you out at Suffolk, but you've got into at least most of the nice drive to get there. And I think the people, again, trying to school, getting past Foreman and all that to get to Flat River, if they get dumped out before they get to Foreman, they're not going to want to do it. So I think that covers the human nature portion of it. Also, I would strongly say that if you closed off between Suffolk and Foreman, keep the sidewalk going, because you're right, there are a lot of people biking and walking and all that, and certainly the goal is not to stop that. So I think that allows you still to do a little sightseeing and get your bikers and walkers, doesn't impact them much. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you.
Perry Beecham, 924 Riverside Drive, and again, some of the things that I'm going to say. I live in the 900 block, so I'm not seeing the same thing as Mark Witzma sees or Bruce Matthews. And I would tell you, I have felt, again, this is with the 900 block, I don't think there's been a volume problem. I think that's been the occasional high speeder that's going down Riverside. I myself, and I would still like, even if you look at option 1, I would still like to see 2 permanent speed radar signs on Riverside. I do think that slows, it brings attention to them. And I think when I say 2, I think there should be 1, in the 300-400 block, and then 1 in the 800 block. I look at, at Hudson where there's 1, and it's about halfway down. I just think that there should be multiple ones. I'm in favor of would be doing that, and then I've read a lot about speed bumps. They have their faults and they have their advantages, and that slows people down. But it tends to, what I've read, it tends to speed people up. After the speed bump, between one speed bump and another. And I've heard from the city that our trucks with snow plowing would tear them up and everything. And they have them in other parts. And I've heard, and I believe this, we have great employees at the DPW, and they would figure out a way to plow them without tearing them all up. The other is, and I talked to, and I see he's here, Dave Gerst, Elm Street, when you're looking at, if you do that, I'm looking at Elm, I really think you would need to restrict any parking on Elm there, because you got 2-way and you're diverting that much more traffic. I think that possibly, and I talked to Dave, and Dave wants to be a good steward of the city, but also I think that's going to affect funeral days, the amount of people that they have parking there. Again, if we date ourselves, used to be parking on Hudson and use that, now there isn't. They purchased a home, tore it down, and have a parking lot. But if you're there at the funeral home on times when there's showings, and also, I don't know if Dave will speak to it, but they do line, when they're having a funeral there, they line the cars up, and they're going to have to change their mindset if you do that. And again, truck traffic, and again, so that one driveway, that one house between Elm and Spring, so what are you going to do? The disposal company's going to drive down, have to turn, go down, and then what do? Because they can't drive through. Then they're going to have to back up back up, back into traffic. I think, again, these are all just things I think you need to consider and figure out. The other is, up on just to the south of Lowell Light and Power, there's 2 trash bins that are for the businesses along there, the restaurants and different things. And they're sitting in the wrong direction currently. So you have to have, because again, at one time, disposal trucks were driving up the whole direction of Riverside the wrong way. And I think somebody from the city talked to them and said, no, you can't do that. Well, you still have that one block where those trucks, I mean, I don't think they can maneuver and do a U-ey, and they have to go the wrong way on that street. They have had, we've had an employee's vehicle get hit, legally parked, it's, again, it's not, their fault, but all those little things. So I think there's the whole, from the business section all the way up Riverside Drive, I think there's a lot of thought that needs to be put into it. I personally, I like driving up Riverside. I like looking at the river as I go, and again, if you do put those in, I would suggest, and temporarily, I would say, leave them 3 feet apart, or whether, so bicyclers can go through there. Because again, if you look at our ordinances, it's illegal to ride a bicycle on sidewalks and all those types of things. So I just think that there's a whole lot of thought that needs to get put through it, and whether you can come up with those ideas, or whether I don't think anybody really wants to pay a lot of money for an engineer to figure all those things out, but there are going to be consequences that you do. And I think those consequences need to be brought to the forefront before you, again, in 2025, 26, when you're actually doing Riverside. Again, I know you're talking about, you can easily put that in now and figure it out, but before things become permanent, I would like to see all those things thought through. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Steve Doyle, 706 Riverside Drive. We've been on our home for 35 years. I don't know if your traffic count caught my bicycle 4 times a day. That hurt the speed count.
You wanted the 50 plus?
But you had about 1/3 that were over 30 miles an hour, which you could even argue that local streets, a lot of little towns, local streets are even less than 25 miles an hour. 20 miles an hour on local streets. And, any thoughts on changing Riverside to a major street, that would be a travesty. So yeah, Elm's a major street. I think this option 1 makes a lot of sense. You've got 22 properties, residents north of that, and it just keeps that traffic from just being diverted over to Hudson. I'll do it now once in a while when I do drive. Just because Riverside Drive is so horrible, the street is that you just slide out there on Elm. But I think this option makes a lot of sense. You have the one resident at 318, which is coming back, and it could say limited access, resident only, or something to that effect. I'm not exactly sure on the garbage situation that Perry was talking about, because isn't Elm still exists. It's not much different than.
I'm talking about the ones with the garbage, the 2 dumpsters that they're pointed in the wrong direction, so you have to go up Riverside the wrong way to to unload those. And then again, I know that, you know, when Larkins and their dumpsters, and there was a big issue with dump truck or garbage backing out onto Main Street, et cetera, it was blind. So again, I'm just throwing that, you know, yeah, there's only one, but I'm just saying that you need to think all those things through.
So, so anyway, I think, you know, this option one, pretty straightforward, makes a lot of sense, simple. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Jared Schwartz, 420 Riverside. I actually have questions before I start spouting off, but is the proposal to go with a permanent barrier from the get-go, or is there some thought of having a temporary barrier at first?
I think we'd want to at least try temporary to start, see how it works.
And then gather some metrics?
Yeah. See
And
whether-
when you gathered your metrics the first time, was that just at one point?
I'm sorry, I don't-
Was that only at one point in the street when you gathered the metrics that were?
Yeah, speed, yeah.
For the speeders, yes.
Because I know Kimball's concerned about the traffic that comes on, I'm guessing from the schools, I don't know, I don't live up that way. I wonder if once the temporary barrier is put in place, you can gather metrics from maybe 2 or 3 different places to see how traffic's changing and where it's coming in and such.
That's a good idea.
One of the things I'm not sure I heard brought up, it maybe touched on a little bit with the dumpsters there for the restaurants. That section of Riverside that's just past the restaurants there, between the old garage and the Lowell Light and Power Building, is it's a disaster waiting to happen, because you have parking on one side and then it switches to the other side, and so basically the street does this number to get around those parking spots, and that's just one more reason, in my opinion, that traffic needs to be reduced drastically, or some of those parking places need to go away. God forbid we take parking spaces out of the city, but that really seems like a huge safety issue. Is that where somebody's vehicle got hit, was in that area, right in that parking area? I heard some mention earlier, but it doesn't matter, I'm sorry. There was something else I was going to ask about. For the record, I'm very much in favor of this idea one. I realize that there's probably a couple little wrinkles that are still going to have to be figured out, but that's why you put a temporary barrier in, collect some metrics, and see where you're at. But one of my concerns when I saw idea two was the traffic coming in from each of those side streets needs to be two-way, because I'm not mistaken, there are homes, driveways on both of those streets, and so you'd almost need like cul-de-sacs or something, and maybe you still have a little bit of, well, no, you don't have that issue here, because anybody that comes in along, that's Elm, right? So yeah, here you'd almost need like cul-de-sacs at each spot. I'm not sure how you'd engineer that, if there's enough space there. It's definitely, I'm assuming when you repave Riverside, whenever that happens, there's probably not going to be much changes to the street itself, correct?
No,
There's not any width in a lot of
No, all it's
places.
gonna be is it's gonna be a mill and overlay, so basically we're gonna have a mill come in, mill it, and repave it, so it's not, we're probably minimal curb work, so.
Okay.
forth.
So-
But Mike, just, because there's a couple, in the 900 block, you're talking about water.
Well, at this time, no, because we didn't have it in, we don't have the money for it.
Okay.
Okay, that's everything I have then. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Grimm. I live at 316 Spring Street. And what I'm seeing here, I looked this over quite a long time. Back to the first idea. You could? I drive up Riverside probably 4 or 5 times a week, and I live on the corner of Spring and Hudson. What I'm seeing is if you put a barrier there at Elm Street, that traffic's going to turn right, or turn left, turn right up Hudson, turn right on Spring Street and then go up Riverside and head through the property. I have that sign that you guys have, it's permanent. I can see that from my window. I see the cars come through there. I know that at 41 miles an hour, the light goes out. And I see that often. So Riverside, it's got a problem, but so does Hudson. Hudson just, you know, but I've seen 3 pullovers this week. So I appreciate that. I had another thought. I've gone down Amity Street, and they put stop signs every couple of blocks, and that has slowed that traffic down quite a little bit. If they put a stop sign down each one of the side streets, people got to stop. They got to go slower. So, and that won't cost as much as speed bumps. So, but and I understand the 318. You know, I don't know how they're going to get to the truck's going to have to back down there probably.
That's what they do now.
For Riverside to get to it. And there's 3 drives on Spring Street. That's all I had.
Thank you.
I like idea 1. One thing to consider.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Who
I'm
are you?
sorry. My name is Beryl Barkus. I live at 215 and a half West Main Street. So I overlook the parking lot and we watch the traffic. The garbage trucks do drive the wrong way. They also, and I'm not sure which company it is, one of them drives all the way to Main Street and then goes out. They don't go through the parking lot. So they are going the full length of that street. I do see that occasionally, so just keep that in mind. I know it's off topic. With this plan, I personally would consider taking the traffic that's on Riverside north of Spring, right, north of Spring, and having it come south instead, reverse that traffic. Because I think he's right. I think some people, not everybody, because it doesn't seem logical to me, but some people would do it. They would turn left, or they'd go out Elm like they're directed to. They're going to go that 1 block, they're going to go in on Spring and continue to go straight. So I think that is going to be something to consider.
So you're saying make Riverside southbound all the way instead of northbound?
Yeah. So you'd still, it would reverse, and I know the residents might not like that because it's going to change your pattern. But that would be a thought. I'm not saying it's the perfect thought, but it is a thought. It would stop those people that have been obnoxiously dashing up Riverside Drive. They're probably still going to figure out they can go up and go in Spring and do the same thing they've been doing. I realize it doesn't get them around the light, but it's a thought. The other thing, and this is, and I'm just basically conveying what was conveyed to me by another city resident who is not here tonight, but I told her that I would express her concerns. A consequence to think about is you've got 3,800 cars per week going up that street. That's 542 cars a day. Main Street does get backed up significantly. And again, this is not my opinion, I'm just expressing her concerns. She could not be here tonight. That's 30 cars an hour over an 18-hour day. So that's a lot of traffic being relieved off of Main Street. And again, I'm not saying that that's my opinion, but it is something to consider because that is a lot of traffic that is going to maintain and sit waiting for the light. That's all I got. Thanks.
Hi. Rob Newman, 928 Riverside Drive. Been there 31 years. I bought it because it was a beautiful place. It was actually hadn't been lived in a while since when I bought it. But moved over here, had the chance to go out on that beautiful drive, and it is super nice. There's so many people that do drive very slowly up through there. But yet the other day, even when your speed monitor was there, I heard something. I ran out front. 2 kids were obviously trying to drag race to see how fast they could get the car going between the blocks. So they stopped in front of my house. They started yelling back and forth. I was like, something obviously needs to be done. I believe the city's going to probably do whatever the city thinks is right. I'm a little concerned about a comment that was saying you're going to strip that street north of 900 block. we're not getting water and sewer up there?
Well, we have water now, but right now, we didn't get the grant for the water line. I don't have the money for it. I have to raise rates higher than I did.
Okay, my water line comes from Hudson.
Right, we were trying to correct that with the grant, but we didn't get the grant through the county.
So we're gonna double my water bill, and I'm still not gonna get water up in front of the house. Is that correct?
Right now, I don't have the funds for it, it's not in our capital project, so.
It just makes no sense. Enough said. Mark Ritzelman, 525 North Hudson.
Okay, you can come up here if you have comment. No shirt from out there. Go ahead, Mark, sorry. No, you're.
Okay. So, I'm for number one. We got very few cars that used to turn off at Riverside Drive on Elizabeth over to Hudson Street. And now we're getting 5, 6, 7 cars, so they're not even getting up to the speed area. And the speeders, like Mike said, I've said that before, and once they pave it, it's gonna be a drag strip. I don't foresee people coming off Elm onto Hudson, then over to Spring, and then back up Riverside Drive. If they want to go through, there's a stop sign. If you get on Hudson Street, you can make a right turn, left turn without stopping. So I really don't see people, jumping back on to zoom up Riverside to come to a stop.
I think they'll try it once.
Well, they will, but I've seen people come up to that stop sign and just blow through. That's the same thing with, I was a police officer for 35 years. The stop signs can be great, but people roll through them. They look like this, and I've seen it before walking on Riverside. I see somebody like this, they look and just blow through it. So, I mean, there could be other options. Maybe, it's ever since the left turn lights got put in, it's back traffic up like crazy. I don't know if you can reverse that or whatever, I don't know. But I do know that we walk a lot on Riverside. We see a lot of people walking on Riverside, biking, and it's, and you get these cars flying by you. I mean, I sat there one time and I just stared at one as he's flying by and I'm going, 25, idiot! His window was down, his radio was going.
So we found our solution.
I can stand out there, Chris can give me my uniform back and I'll stand out there with my rifle saying, freeze! But no, like I say, I don't really see people make the turn on Elm, go up, turn Spring, and then make another, and then that's a second stop then too. Because they'll have a stop at Hudson, a stop at Spring, 3 stops, and a stop at Hunt.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think that they will be.
I don't think they would,
Convenient.
but there's a lot of cars that have been turning off before they get up to Riverside. They come off and they turn off, so that count could be higher.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Kevin Boulier, 10 Riverside again. So, coming this way down Main Street, that's one of 3 directions in which you can go north, right? So, this solution here really only blocks the people that are coming this way on Main Street and then going to turn right to school. It doesn't address people coming, say, from the highway and coming this way, or coming from Grand Rapids and coming this way. They're still going to do the left turn or go straight here, and if they need to go down Flat River, or if they want to get around Foreman, they're going to cut down one of those side streets, and then we still have 2/3 of the traffic, or better. So it's just something to consider. It isn't just the people trying to turn right, it's also people coming from the other 2 major directions. Obviously, we don't care as much about this direction right now, but the other 3 there's